So you know what's really boring? Being sensible, and hence why medium SUVs are, because they're incredibly sensible, inherently boring. So to many, and especially those in our comment sections of our other videos, Kias are just utter crap. But the thing is, when these Sportages first came out, when they were brand new, they were hugely popular and celebrated. So are all of the naysayers correct? Is a used Sportage just utter rubbish? Or should you genuinely consider buying one? Let's find out. Now in this video, we're going to be focusing on the 4th generation 2016 to 2021 Sportage, or Sportage, which, fun fact, actually shares a whole bunch of stuff with the Hyundai Tucson, including its engines. Speaking of the engines, here in Australia, the Sportage has been available with 2 and 2.4 litre petrol engines, the 2 litre being front-wheel drive, the 2.4 litre being all-wheel drive, and a 2 litre turbo diesel, which is also all-wheel drive, although it is ostensibly a front-wheel drive car until the car recognises that it's lost traction and then it sends power to the rear wheels. But unless you're a professional racing driver, you'll never know. Trim spec-wise, and depending on the year, Australia initially received the SI, SI Premium, SLI, GT line and Platinum. And if you're a fan of the tennis, the limited edition Australian Open Edition might just be for you. There was also a midlife update released halfway through 2018, which received extra equipment, some mechanical changes, a bit of a facelift, all that sort of stuff. But look, if you'd like to delve deep into all of the specific details about the different variants of this Sportage and the upgrades, all that sort of stuff, just jump on ReDriven.com and check out our fabulous and completely free ReDriven cheat sheets. Basically, it's like the ultimate used car buyer's guide for this Sportage. Now, one of the more, let's say, challenging aspects of producing these videos is making the, let's say, the more boring cars a bit more entertaining. So let's try and spice this up a bit. Power. Now, this particular Sportage has the 2 litre petrol engine driving purely the front wheels, and it's fine. What I'm finding is if you push the right pedal down, the car tends to go faster, not in like a fast performance car kind of way, but it also doesn't require like an immense level of bravery to overtake anything. Ride and handling. Now notice how I'm still driving on the road and I haven't been thrown into there in the scenery, and that's because the Australian tuned and developed suspension is still, after all these years and this many kilometres, fantastic. The ride and handling in this car, excellent. Basically, it absorbs all the bumps really easily and it hasn't rolled over yet, so that's a good sign. Steering. So, turn this thing and amazingly, the car changes direction. It's genius. It's also quite enjoyable to actually do. Braking. Push the left pedal and the car stops. Vision. Now, Kia have decided to make all the windows out of glass, which is excellent for visibility. Plus, all the parameters of the car are super easy to judge. So, if you run into something, it just means you're a shit driver. Other stuff. Rattles and squeaks and weird sounds like that? None, not even on like the biggest bumps. And overall, there aren't really any offensive sounds at all, except for my voice. Look, overall, something like a Mazda CX-5 is probably more enjoyable to drive, but in saying that, the Sportage is far more enjoyable than the vast majority of other cars in this class. In fact, this is a genuinely enjoyable thing to drive. However, don't get too excited yet because there are a few issues. We'll get to them in a second. Okay, now the interior, first up from a design aspect, it's really nice in here. This one, it's a little scratchy in terms of materials. Like this is all, kind of hard plastics and sort of here as well. But then up here, that doesn't feel sort of too bad. Some nice painted finishes here and there. Obviously, the materials used may change depending on the year and the trim spec as well. Now, seating-wise, first of all, the seats are super comfortable. There have been some complaints that the seats aren't that comfortable. Personally, I find them really comfy. Even sitting position-wise, it's almost like the perfect halfway point between driving a car and driving an SUV. Really nice. Now, wear and tear wise in this particular car, this car is this owner's everyday driver. He has a couple of kids, and wear and tear is okay. It would be heaps better with a proper detail, but there are some little scratches and marks here. The seats, these fabric seats, are wearing really well. Even on some of the leather seat models, the leather wears quite nicely. Door cards are good. All these painted finishes, that's not coming off, that isn't too shiny. The kind of leather texture here on the gear selector is a little bit smooth. All these hard plastics, they wear really well. Now, as far as practicality, up front, you've got decent sized door bins. You've got a little spot here for your own dust and hair and crumbs. You've got a great spot here for for your phone, fits lovely. 2 different size cup holders, one being just small enough for the small pretentious coffees that I like. There's a storage bin here, pretty decent sized glove box, and a spot for your sunglasses up there, and that is it for practicality in the front. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 13 centimeters taller than another popular and talented South Korean, Glenn from The Walking Dead. This is my driving position and it's excellent. Heaps of knee room, heaps of foot room, the seats are really comfortable, plus they recline, which is pretty handy. This car doesn't have a sunroof, but I've been in the back of these with the ones with the sunroof and it feels airy and spacious and not claustrophobic at all if your kids are claustrophobic. Now, wear and tear in this particular car, as I mentioned, this guy, the owner of this, Glenn, has a different Glenn, I just realized. Not Glenn from The Walking Dead, whole different Glenn. Anyway, Glenn, my mate, has 2 kids, great kids. You'd never know. There's no wear and tear back here. This feels fantastic. They are really well-behaved kids, but look, overall with wear and tear inside, okay, the materials in here, they do feel a little bit cheaper, but they are hard-wearing materials, and you can tell because it's sustaining any amount of abuse you throw at it. Now, practicality in the back seat, you've got 2 mat pockets behind the seats, you've got a USB charging port, 12-volt port there, a couple of air vents, door pockets, another little cubby hole here, and an armrest with 2 cup holders there. As far as practicality in the boot goes, the Sportage actually has one of the largest boots in its class, plus the seats fold flat. The only negative is there's no way of folding the seats flat from back here. You've got to go around to the side and pull the lever on the side of the back seat. It's a bit annoying, but still, huge boot. Now, it's really good news in terms of tech features and safety gear in this generation Sportage, because it feels like Kia were just hell-bent on throwing an immense amount of value for money at these things. Now, in saying that, obviously what equipment and tech and features you get will vary depending on the year and the trim spec, but what you can expect even on the very early base models include 17-inch alloy wheels, front fog lights, automatic headlights, rear parking sensors, a reversing camera, a 7-inch LCD touchscreen display, an okay sounding 6-speaker stereo, Bluetooth connectivity, and 2 USB charging ports. But spec up to a more recent and top spec model and you'll be greeted with 19-inch alloy wheels, HID headlights with washers, LED front fog lights, electric panoramic sunroof, keyless entry, an electric tailgate, vented and heated front seats, dual zone climate control, leather upholstery, a larger 8-inch LCD touchscreen, wireless mobile phone charger, an excellent sounding 8-speaker JBL stereo, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Again, if you want to know all of the specific details of which variant gets what levels of features and technology, just jump on ReDriven.com and check out that cheat sheet. But when it comes to safety, it's good news here. When Australian Safety Authority ANCAP tested these back in 2016, they scored a perfect 5-star result. But to take you through exactly what safety features you can expect, we're going to have a professional dancer communicate it in the medium of interpretive dance. Again, for the full breakdown of all of the safety features, again, just jump on ReDriven.com and check out that awesome and free cheat sheet. Actually, before we get into what goes wrong, just got to talk about the looks for a second. Personally, I love the way these look. I think it looks more like a chunky hatchback than it does an SUV, almost like it's a hatchback that's had some sort of horrific allergic reaction to something, but in a good way. Also, I think they look exceptionally good on the larger 19-inch wheels. These are 18s, but the 19s, they look fantastic, which leads me to believe that I think it'd look really good just a bit lowered, but lowering a Sportage is just silly, isn't it? Or is it? Anyway, look, what goes wrong with these? Remember how before I mentioned that these things have a few little issues? Well, let's kick off with the exterior. First up, the motors for the power windows are sort of building a bit of a reputation for failing, meaning that you can't open or close the window. There are some reports that models with a sunroof, the sunroof, it doesn't fail as such, but it just gets a bit slow and stubborn to use. But the good news is it's easily fixed by lubricating the tracks. Quite a few owners have complained that the headlights don't emit enough light even when they're on the high beam. There are some sporadic reports of owners complaining that the door locking mechanism fails, basically locking them out of the car. But this generally affects Sportages or Sportages before 2019. The AEB system will apparently disable itself if the lens for the camera becomes obstructed with mud or grime or whatever. It generally only happens in like snowy and crap conditions. Also, there are some sporadic reports, and we're talking very sporadic reports, of the sunroofs just shattering while driving. Very sporadic, but Again, another very sporadic one here. There have been a couple of reports that the reversing camera can kind of glitch out, fail to show a black screen. The problem is, in the worst case scenarios, it requires the entire infotainment system to be replaced. Now inside, there are a few sporadic reports of air conditioning compressor issues. Best case scenario, it just gets a bit noisy and annoying, but worst case scenario, the entire system can fail. There's also a few reports of the airbag warning light coming up on the dash when it doesn't need to. Chances are it's the airbag control module kind of glitching out, and that needs replacing. Now, before we go on, I just need to give a massive shout out to all of the Kia and Sportage owners groups and everybody that helped us out with the research for this video. You guys are legends. Thank you so much. Also, if you own one of these Sportage models, we'd love to know about your ownership experience, so let us know in the comments below. Also, guys, the only way that ReDriven can grow is with your support, and the easiest way of supporting us, if you haven't already done this, is by hitting the like, subscribe, and bell buttons and sharing this content amongst your mates. Honestly, that helps us out so much. Okay, now, mechanically, what goes wrong with the Sportage? I'd love to tell you, but I can't, because I'm not a qualified mechanic, but Jim certainly is.
Check the recalls. There are a few recalls on these regarding fires from ABS units and the fuel system. Now, although very few of these worldwide actually did catch fire, and I believe none in Australia, it's still good to have those recalls actioned because it is better to be safe than sorry. And just on those recalls, it's not necessarily a bad thing for a car to have a lot of recalls. It's just the manufacturer being proactive about a potential problem that may not even apply to your car. And that's way better than ignoring the issue for owners to have problems years later. Now, the petrol engines, the previous generations of these were notoriously known for having catastrophic engine failures, to the point now where second-hand replacement units are actually getting hard to get. The engines in the post-2015 QL Sportages are much improved, although they are still just coming out of warranty, so the long-term prospects are a little bit unknown at this point. We do know that some do have some oil consumption issues. Now, that may be indicative of things to come, but time will tell. In terms of common complaints and problems, they're known to have a fairly normal mix of coolant leaks from thermostat housings and water pumps, a few sensor glitches, especially knock sensors, but overall, no worse than any other car from Japan or Korea. As for the diesels, they do have a known problem with the turbos and the wastegate actuators. Now, should that problem occur out of warranty, it's about a $6,000 repair, or even more if done by the dealership. They do have a surprisingly low rate of reported DPF and EGR complications. They do have some oil leaks and some injector issues, but overall, pretty reliable. The 6 and 8-speed automatic transmissions are considered to be very reliable, although there are a few reported cases of complete transmission replacements by the dealership due to ongoing complications. It might seem like there are a lot of problems across the range, but any vehicle that's sold in large numbers like this will have a lot of reported issues. Overall, the QL Sportage is considered to be very reliable, and because they've got a 7-year warranty from new, and a condition to maintain that warranty is keeping the services up to date, we find that most of them have got a pretty good service history. And if you're buying one that has the remainder of the new car warranty, it's very important you make sure that all those services have been done and up to date, either by the dealer or by an independent mechanic, because if not, you may be inadvertently buying a car that already has a voided warranty.
But in saying that, there are a whole bunch of really critical things that you need to check out, not just about the Sportage, but any used car. And hence why we've made the ultimate used car buyer's guide. It basically simplifies the entire used car buying process, and honestly, it could save you thousands of dollars. Pricing here in Australia currently kicks off from just under $15,000 for one of the early base models with a stack of kilometres on it, and tops out at just over $45,000 for something at the opposite end of the spectrum. Something like our test car here, a 2018 SI Premium in really good condition with around about 65,000 Ks on it, around about 32 grand. But what do they cost to own and operate? Now, depending on the engine and the driveline, Kia claim fuel consumption figures ranging from 6.4 litres per 100 Ks to 8.5 litres per 100 Ks, which through our research, it's possible, but it's also highly unlikely. Although in saying that, even the worst fuel consumption figures we could find, they weren't anything too horrendous. This particular car is claimed at returning 7.9 litres per 100 Ks, it's actually getting 8.8. Also, good news in terms of the warranty period as well. Because of Kia's excellent 7-year warranties, most of these still have some factory support left on them. It's really only the first models that are kind of running out of factory support these days. So even though that whole what goes wrong section of this video might seem like a whole lot of doom and gloom, the good news is most of those issues, they're going to be covered under warranty anyway, which then leads us to the question, should you buy one at all? Well, okay, the simple answer is probably. Like any used car, it is critical to make sure that any Sportage that you're looking at ticks all of the boxes. And please make sure to have it checked out for a full pre-purchase inspection before you hand over your cash. But if it all checks out, it's a yes, buy one. We'd highly recommend going for a petrol engine Sportage over a diesel, as any fuel savings may be eaten up with maintenance costs down the track. But for whatever reason, if you just must have a diesel, yeah, okay, fine. It's still arguably the most boring category of car, but at least the Sportage makes boring enjoyable. So guys, we want to know, which do you buy? Do you buy a Sportage or a RAV4 or a CRV or a Tiguan or a CX-5? Let us know in the comments. See you next week. Good news is it's easily fixed by lubricating the tracks. Fucking hell. Okay, here we go. For example, this particular car is claimed. This car is reported. 7.8. Well, okay, so Jesus, my brain just died. Here we go.